Hello and welcome to IoT Builders, a live stream where we discuss a range of topics on the Internet of Things, from embedded devices to cloud services, all from an IoT Builder perspective. So this is episode 2, and in this episode you will get to meet our developer advocates who have been building IoT products and now have the opportunity to help the IoT Builder community. So I'm Dan Gross. I'm a senior developer advocate for FreeRTOS at AWS, and I'm joined by my colleagues and co-hosts. Alina, do you want to start?
Yes, I would like to start. Thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot for hosting us here and for giving us the chance to speak a little bit about what we do as developer advocates. So I am a senior developer advocate at AWS, and I'm working on AWS IoT connectivity, consumer and connectivity services.
Awesome.
Nenad, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm super happy to be part of the second episode. So, I'm Nenad. I'm a senior IoT developer, as you guys as well, in the same team. And I'm mostly focusing on green grass and automotive, so the services around that. Maybe also Syed, we have him today as well. You want to introduce yourself, Syed?
Yeah. Hi guys. Thank you for the opportunity, Dan. And proud to be part of this group. I'm Syed Rehan. I'm a senior developer advocate, like rest of my colleagues here. And I'm super focused on developer experiences and open source from AWS IoT perspective. Over to you, Dan.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. So just to explain the format a little bit here on IoT Builders, the sessions are hosted by us, and we are developer advocates at AWS. And, we're here to invite other IoT builders from the community to share their experience involved in building IoT products and services and have a discussion about IoT. So feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to share your experience in building IoT, or if you have any comments or suggestions for the sessions. So let's get to know the team a little bit more. You heard some brief introductions from us. Let's dive in a little bit more about maybe your background and how you became a DA, and then what your current area of focus is. So again, let's go back to Alina.
Thanks, Dan. So in terms of my background, I come from a software engineering background. So I've got a bachelor and a master in computer science, and I've pretty much most of my existence worked as an engineer. And also a bit as a software architect, so for about 2 or 3 years. And I've got experience with AWS serverless and with AWS IoT. In terms of joining AWS, I joined AWS in 2019, and I was part of the professional services team, where I was building IoT products and solutions with customer teams in various industry verticals, for example, building management systems and some manufacturing and also telecommunications. And in terms of my area of focus, this is, like I said, on consumer and connectivity IoT. So this is the set of services that are pretty much the backbone that allow devices to connect and monitoring fleets of devices, as well as taking care of the security and defending against security breaches.
That's really great.
Nenad,
how about you,
sorry,
Nenad?
Dan. Yeah. So more or less, I started my career actually as an embedded system developer. I have a degree in mechatronics, which is kind of combination of mechanical engineering, electronics, and informatics, but have been working with embedded systems for like 10 years. And then, that's what I kind of started being interested in IoT. and having that, kind of seeing the part that cloud plays in all that, us being connected together with devices. I moved to kind of being a solution architect at AWS in about 3.5 years ago. And then moved to also being a part of professional services in the same team as Alina. And now I'm trying to share my experiences, what I learned throughout this kind of like 15 years of being in a field and developing products with the broader community. That's kind of the idea.
And what's your area of focus now as a developer advocate?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, more or less things around automotive and green grass. So we also recently launched a new, it went actually GA, a new service called AWS IoT Fleetwise. So also things around that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I just read that that went GA just yesterday?
Yesterday, exactly, yes.
Great timing. Okay, let's go to Syed for your background and how you became a DA and what are you focusing on? I should say that this is Syed's first week as a DA, so welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so pretty excited to be here. So similar to Nenad, I've actually started as a embedded C++ software engineer way back in 2005. After that. I worked in some financial sectors like banks and some mobile development companies such as Nokia and so on. And I've been through, I guess I would say, in IVR, customer experiences, and back-end systems and stuff like that. So I've done quite a bit on every side of things. As for AWS, I recently joined AWS DA role this week, I guess, and it's nearly 5 years I have been with AWS. In the past, nearly up to last week, up to 5 years, I guess, I was working as a specialist solution architect within IoT domain. Yeah, and over to you, Dan.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Welcome, and really glad to have you on board. Maybe just a little bit about myself. My name is Dan Gross, and let's see, my background. I started developing applications in the mid '90s. Mostly focused on web and e-commerce, and have really taken a little bit of a detour from that to cloud services and then devices and things like that. I've been involved in some developer relations programs in the past for other companies, but this is exciting to be at AWS and working on products like ExpressLink, which I started off doing some work on, and now I'm focused on FreeRTOS, which is a real-time operating system that is open source and is intended for microcontrollers. So small constrained devices that need an operating system. I'm super excited to be here. I'm excited we started this IoT Builders show, and looking forward to episodes to come. We're hoping that we can have different kinds of guests from different areas. Last week we featured a guest from ARM. His name's Ed Miller, and that was a really great discussion we had with Ed. So if you missed that episode, I believe we have it saved, so you can go back and listen to it again. Nenad was also the co-host on that episode. So that was that was really exciting, and glad to now be doing episode 2 here. So yeah, let's go back around, do a round table again, and let's talk about, why do you think IoT is cool? What makes you excited about IoT, and what makes you sort of passionate about working in IoT? Maybe change the order a little bit. Go with Nenad first.
Oh yeah, so interesting question. So if overall, I think where we are heading, when it comes to convenience and so forth. If we have those devices that are connected, that are helping us with the daily tasks, that's basically a great future to be in, right? So you can save some time when they're working, of course. They can save you some time, and you can focus on what you do best. So yeah, and then it is quite interesting to be on that field and building out those technologies. So that kind of excites me as well, thinking about that future where everything is connected, everything is just working, everything is under our fingertips. So yeah, we can focus on what we want.
That's cool. That's really great. Syed?
Yeah, thank you. It is an interesting question. So, having worked with, I guess, with lots of customers from connected product space, um, I have always seen the outcome of AWS IoT impacting on people's life and how it basically impacting on daily basis. Interesting story, I guess, with one of my customer. Last December, when we were in the midst of pandemic, I guess. Um, One of the air purifiers which is connected to AWS IoT from a company called Blue Air. I bought that one, and my wife and my kids, they all got COVID, and I used that air purifier actually, and I looked at its connectivity to AWS IoT, and luckily I didn't got COVID because the purifier, I guess, worked, and my family and kid actually had COVID, and yeah, so it works. And what drives me and motivates me is that the connected products, the connected devices to AWS IoT is how it's basically impacting our daily life.
Yeah, there's a lot of the products these days are connected one way or another, and offer various kinds of analytics or control, things like that. It's really really interesting now that even a product like an air purifier is connected to the cloud.
Indeed, yeah.
So okay, so to you, Alina. So what do you think? Why do you think IoT is cool?
Well, for me, what I find really exciting about IoT is more or less the fact that it is an enabler. So things that were not really possible a while back are nowadays possible, and this is because of the use cases and what IoT actually enables, right? So in the past, machines were always, at least in my mind, I don't know how it is for everybody else, but in my mind, all these physical devices were a bit like black boxes. So, you could look at them, you could touch them, you knew that they were around, but you wouldn't actually be able to somehow digitally visualize them or to imagine that you actually can connect to those devices and get some data out and be able to somehow model them and see them in action. And I really think that this is what got me very attracted to IoT in the first place. This idea of blending the digital world and the physical world. And I guess in my engineering experience, the first time I was actually introduced to IoT was something that will always remain in my mind. And it was a really exciting project that I was doing. It was about connecting elevators. And I think as a let's say user of an elevator, I was constantly taking the elevator, right? So does everyone. But I really didn't understand, just how much complexity there is, and how, as an engineer, everything kind of works in abstraction layers, and kind of imagining how to create these abstraction layers on top of different types of elevators. It was just fascinating. So I think, yeah, then I think that's it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And that's along the lines of if I take the question, it's along the lines of how I think about it too. Is from a from a hands-on kind of engineering perspective, I think what's gotten me really excited about IoT is just what you can do as a developer, as a builder. Um, yourself. Some systems are hard to really get involved in. You mentioned elevators are very complex. I imagine you you need quite a bit of training and expertise to be involved in building elevators. But I think for IoT, what's great is how I got started many years ago is was just with some products like Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and things like that, and you can see the effects of your work immediately, and you have control over how you build the projects that you're working on, and it's accessible really to kind of a wide range of developers. So that's what I think is cool about IoT. There's just the accessibility of it that really, and especially now with cloud services and being very pervasive and fairly cheap, really. And the technologies being available, and a lot of open source technologies as well, and the
Yeah.
hardware becoming cheaper and more accessible as well, just leads to I think a lot of possibilities with what you can do with IoT, and I
Yeah.
really I like that aspect of it. So that's my answer.
Yeah, yeah. This actually brings me to the second question is that, and maybe then you can start with this. Is like, what do you think are the biggest challenges for those IoT projects now that you kind of started on this topic?
Mm. Yeah, challenges. So that is, yeah. So as we know, IoT. We've been talking about IoT now for a number of years, and the projections for the number of devices and how IoT is going to really be everywhere and in all devices. Maybe hasn't reached its pinnacle yet, and so some might say, some of the naysayers might say, well, IoT is not fulfilling its promise or whatever. But I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that it's still in some ways you know early stages, and I think there's a lot more yet to come. Lots of runway for IoT, but one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned, there's really a whole number of different vendors and technologies, and many ways to do IoT. You can build IoT projects in any number of ways. And although that's a good thing, it can also be a bit of a challenge, because how do you put all these pieces together? What tools do you use? What products do you um, buy from various vendors? If it's hardware, or if it's software, middleware, cloud services. There's it's almost like you have a whole pile of Lego pieces, and you can build whatever you want, but sometimes figuring out how best to build it is the challenge. So I'd say that's my answer, is just the breadth of products and services is a real challenge, just figuring out how to put it all together.
Yeah, interesting. So I don't know, Alina, what would be your opinion on this when it comes to the challenges?
Well, from my experience with IoT solutions, and again, I think it's because of the kind of projects I've been involved in, which actually moved at larger scale. I think one of the biggest challenges is really understanding how you can move past prototypes. And I think this kind of problem, I mean, there are a bunch of problems that occur or issues that you discover with IoT solutions that actually come at a larger scale that you don't notice when you are just, sort of playing around or building a prototype or building an MVP. And I think the challenge is really understanding how you can move past that and designing and writing your code to sort of deal with all these problems that you discover later, right? So I can give you one example, right? So if you've got, for example, 100 devices that you're trying to connect, and one device goes offline, that's like 1% of these 100 devices that you are connecting, and you're just going to be like, well, it's one device, does it really matter? I shouldn't deal with this case because it's just one device. It doesn't matter. But then you just scale up and you go to 100,000 devices, and then suddenly 1%, it's a lot more. And then when you go to millions, then actually you notice an impact on your product. If suddenly, let's say 1% of your fleet just goes on offline overnight. And this has happened to me actually on one of the projects. I mean, we've lost 1% of our devices overnight to some sort of connectivity problem because of some issue with the modem. And then you suddenly start caring, and you are kind of forced to dive deep and to learn and understand certain things that at the beginning you were not understanding. And I think this is where it's kind of this threshold, and it's about being resilient and not giving up when you are reaching this threshold and just saying, I'm going to go on, I'm going to understand, and I'm going to make it work. So yeah, I think it's just that IoT solutions can get messy very fast, and you need to find ways to make them recover. And of course, what Dan mentioned is fully true. This number of standards that's only increasing, and numbers of building blocks. Is not helping. You kind of, I'm sure these jokes about the standards that keep going around.
Yeah, this SKCD, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, the great thing
just build
about
a new.
standards is there's so many to choose from.
Right, and when you don't find, when you can't choose, you just invent a new one, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so
That's excellent. Yeah, it's true. Just to add on to Alina's point about challenges. Yeah, I think that it's funny. When we talk about a fleet, and these are devices. We see them as a fleet sometimes, almost like servers in a data center or instances in the cloud, that kind of thing. But what's different about it is that these are actual devices that in some cases people have, and it's a little more personal in some cases, right? It's not just a server or an instance or something. It's actually somebody's interacting with it, and that 1% or that one device actually maybe has a bigger impact than if it were a server in a server room or something like that. And so I think that is a good point.
Yeah, remember this in a industrial environment, right? So when, as you said, there were some situations when some of the devices were offline, but they were kind of needed for the building out some industrial equipment. So you can imagine how much cost that was in terms of like production reduced and so forth. So yeah, it's a great story, Alina. Yeah, I don't know, Syed, maybe you can share some light what you think the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenges I have come across is actually not to do with technology, it's more to do the change and adoption from customers' mindset, how they actually want to basically move their product line into connected space. Um, and I have had challenges where speaking with customers, they're all on board, and when you go to the higher management, they don't want to break what is actually working for them, which could be on prem, and they don't want to move it to the cloud, and they don't like change. And overcoming the IT and OT from industrial aspects of thing, I should say, is the biggest challenge, because IT might be on board for it, whereas operational technology might not be board for it, and vice versa. And I've always found the disjoint in large enterprises where the OT doesn't, or should I say, on board on this, whereas IT is, and so on.
Yeah, I felt that as well. Yeah, excellent. That's an excellent. There was a to kind of like share my take on this as well. I remember a situation when we were working on a project. As you said, I think the technology wasn't much of an issue, but it was more or less we had like the guys who were working with embedded systems. We had guys who were working on hardware, and then back end, front end, product owners, like all of that stuff, developing a specific IoT product. And an iteration cycle for somebody who is building a PCB and then having it manufactured is like measured in like 6 months or so. And then when you go to embedded software, like the cycles are there reduced to like 3 months, 2 months, and so forth. And then you have like high level developers who are like in 2 weeks they're shipping new features. And now how do you get all those people in sync so that they are delivering against the same product, but with this kind of different mindsets and different cadence? So yeah, it's like really interesting situation nevertheless. So yeah.
And we need to, I guess that's where we need to unblock the important people who are actually doing the development work, such as developer experience, developers. And we as a developer experience team can help you guys to unblock your technical blockers, and obviously scale the community and in the field. That way it makes it easier for you to create a product, a prototype, or even an MVP to win the buyout from the business, right?
Yeah. Alina, you wanted to say also something about this mindset as well,
Yeah,
right?
so I just, yeah, thanks, Nenad. Yeah, what I wanted to say is actually going very much hand in hand with what Syed mentioned. I too have had experiences with, projects for customers in professional services, whereby things were just moving really, really slowly. And it was a problem with the mindset, right? An issue with the mindset, because IoT as a technology can't exist in vacuum, right? So you're building on top of what you already have in your technology stack. And I think sometimes it's just hard to move fast under certain circumstances. And then the slower you move, you kind of forget. If your journey is really, really slow, you end up forgetting why you're doing it, right? So I think this is where if the tools, the technology and the tools, they're there. The idea is there, but it's just a matter of accelerating at the right time. And that's where getting the buy-in is very important, giving developers the tools to do things faster, and allowing them to focus on actual problems that bring their application logic further, instead of worrying about things that they shouldn't be worrying about, like aspects of provisioning and aspects of connection that ideally providers should make easier. And I mean, I think this is quite interesting, because especially Dan, having a lot of experience with ExpressLink, it would be interesting to hear your perspective, around this sort of out of the box solutions to make certain flows easier.
Yeah, I think, and that is one of the goals. You mentioned AWS IoT Express Link, both a hardware solution as well as a service solution. Basically, you can drop a chip into your design and have connectivity to the cloud essentially out of the box. It requires a little bit of development, a little bit of programming, but the interface is extremely easy. It's essentially AT commands and over serial, and so all of a sudden, your product can be a connected product pretty simply and pretty easily. And I think services like that, products like that, really help propel us forward in the IoT space. And even with ExpressLink, it's not just AWS. Really, the partners that we've worked with are so important there, which again is around maybe some of the complexity of IoT, which is lots of players involved in order to make a successful product. Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. Go ahead, Syed.
Yeah, I have a question then for the benefit of wider audiences, right? I mean, we are solving the problem of having this express link connected to your microcontroller and getting connected to AWS IoT. Do we have, you can obviously shed some light on this to say that, okay, by dropping this, we were able to remove the provisioning process, or were we able to remove the update or firmware update process? Where did we actually got the benefit or return on this with using Express Link? Can you express some light on that?
The benefit, say again.
Yeah, so some of the benefits which our developer community will find it very useful to adapt and start using ExpressLink, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I think some of the main benefits, I mean, like you mentioned, provisioning becomes a challenge at scale, because when you start manufacturing devices in the factory, you have to have some kind of provisioning scheme. You can't just drop a certificate into a into a string and connect. You need mutual authentication, and those certificates and that are generated in the key material needs to be handled properly through a provisioning process. And so having those chips already pre-provisioned for AWS really helps that manufacturing process, and it helps really from the development perspective, something that you don't need to worry about how am I going to deal with secure connections? How am I going to work with the credentials needed for that? It kind of offloads a lot of that work. And so I think it helps both from a developer perspective as well as a manufacturing perspective. And it simplifies your code quite a bit too. Like if you have a FreeRTOS application, and now you're using an external communication chip like an ExpressLink, there's a lot of code that just kind of evaporates that you don't need to worry about now. So yeah, there's a few aspects to why that's beneficial, but that's a good question.
That's actually quite good. I mean, by that we're actually bootstrapping your development pipeline to scale and adapt, innovating your product quite easily with this Express-Link, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you can focus on other other aspects of development, like the customer experience, the working with the sensors, all your peripherals and things like that. You can focus more on those types of efforts, which at the end of the day add more value than figuring out how to connect to the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, so let's see. Let's move on. If you're just joining us, this is a roundtable discussion between myself and Alina and Nenad and Syed. We're part of the AWS IoT developer advocate team, and we're just talking about IoT topics. So, if you have any comments or questions for us, feel free to reach out. Since this is on Twitter Spaces, you should have our handles. So, there should be no. It should be easy to get a hold of us. But if you have any anything to add, please reach out. Hey, Nenad, why don't you talk a little bit about what our mission here is with being developer advocates in IoT. We talk about our 3 pillars. Maybe you could mention that.
Yes, no, excellent. Yeah, so one of the pillars is, we are kind of doing right now is like community engagements. Try to engage with the community and get their pain points, get their ways of thinking and their needs, and then bringing those needs back. That's like a second pillar, developing against them, and then the third pillar would be kind of building content in order to shortcome some of the challenges that they are having. So yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of closing that circle of asking actually on this forum people what they need, bringing that information back, building upon it, using the pace that we are used to at AWS, and then more or less, providing that back in terms of like how community can use those things that we built. So that's kind of the circle.
Excellent. Let's see. Alina, you mentioned that you're focusing on consumer and connectivity, also known as C2. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that. What is that vertical? What makes that unique, and what are some areas that are interesting in that space?
Yeah, sure. So the IoT consumer and connectivity services basically comprise pretty much what makes the backbone of AWS IoT, right? So this is what allows device manufacturers and also enterprises to connect their devices and have this sort of 24/7 enabled real-time communication with their device fleet over MQTT or over HTTPS. And also at the same time manage their fleet of devices, anything from grouping the devices based on certain characteristics or attributes to performing large-scale operations or sending commands to their fleet. Or running over-the-air updates against the fleet. So this is what comprises the device management section. And then, of course, you've got monitoring and security, creating this sort of security profiles in the cloud and passing them onto your device to make sure that, certificate rotation is performed correctly, that your device does not have ports open that you don't want your device to communicate on, or other devices or things out there to reach your device on those ports. And this is what we understand by monitoring. So it's pretty much connectivity, device management, and monitoring and security of your devices at scale. And in terms of the services or the palette of services that are sort of encountered, this is really what goes under AWS IoT Core, AWS IoT Device Management, and of course also Device Defender.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
Exciting stuff, right?
It is. It would be great to talk a little bit about FleetWise, since it was GA'd yesterday, and Nenad, you have a really great FleetWise demo that you showed at Embedded World, last June, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about FleetWise, since that is an AWS IoT service.
Yeah, that demo was presented there, but we also took the essence of that demo and then created like a YouTube video. I'll share this afterwards. And then we also, around that YouTube video, we created a repository on GitHub on how people can actually replicate this. So whatever has been presented there can be then easily replicated on your own, right? Who is interested in this kind of technology? But coming back into answering your question in terms of like, what is the AWS IoT FleetWise? So that service is used to run on an ECU, which is technically placed in a car. and listen to all the communication in a car that comes from sensor data or any other places, and then basically provide that data to the cloud, so that you can make some kind of judgment of base of like how your fleet is performing. So if you imagine having like thousands of vehicles, and those vehicles are producing data like a brake pressure, a wheel turn, a gas pedal, an open door, closed door, whatever you can imagine in the car, you can then deduct some insight based on like how your fleet is performing. And one thing could be you can also have like a predictive maintenance of your fleet, in terms of like, okay, if a specific car is a specific set of cars are kind of having issues with a tire, they're more frequently being used and so forth. You can say, okay, I will ship, let's say, those tires near those places where a specific fleet of vehicles are kind of using this. So yeah, you can be more proactive rather than reactive in this sense. On the technology perspective, this is using AWS IoT Core underneath. It's a small there's a small application, so-called AWS IoT FleetWise Edge agent, that's running on the ECU, that's sending this data. And additionally, this data, the AWS IoT FleetWise allows you to model this data, the data that I just mentioned in terms of sensors, and then even create some campaigns in scenarios where you don't want this all data from like the CAN messages to be streamed. You can also set some triggers that will be executed on the edge, and let's say sense only specific amount of data. So that's also something as a feature on top of this as well. But I encourage everybody who is kind of interested in this to take a look at the video, because that video goes into details of like how this is structured, and provide some examples with like Carla, where we can drive a simulated car and have those sensors kind of sending this data.
Yeah, it's a really fun demo. It's like a video game, but all instrumented and sending telemetry and everything. It's great.
Yeah.
Cool. And as I understand, the plan is to show this demo at CES in January. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, first reInvent. So we have reInvent
of
as
course.
well. End of November, right? So that will be the place where we'll be showing this as well. And then for CES as well, hopefully including some additional features like hypervisor, and some demonstration around like how you can use automotive grade Linux, and having a hypervisor there to abstract some of the signaling as well. So yeah, this is currently a project that I'm kind of working on in the background.
Great. Yeah, that's exciting. Let's see. Let's go to Syed, and your focus now is open source, and so what what does that mean for you now that you're a developer advocate and you have that perspective?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I have been getting my grooves on, and trying to establish, I guess, AWS IoT reach, and scaling the developer community. I have been looking at a couple of organizations and conferences, summits. Yocto project is one of them. Automotive grade Linux is one of them. I certainly had a look at ROS as well, and had a look at LF Edge as well. So all of these open source initiatives, open source frameworks for our developers out there listening to us. Yeah, so I'm just basically getting my grooves on, and from DA perspective, I guess. Scaling the open source community and having them enabled, connecting to AWS IoT by utilizing these open source tool is where I would be focusing my perspective. Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, that's great. I think, maybe a lot of people don't know that there are quite a number of open source initiatives at AWS, including FreeRTOS, one area that I'm involved in, but many other open source projects. You mentioned the Yocto project, and yeah,
Yeah.
there's quite a number. So that's very interesting.
I have a question for you, Dan, as you are actually focused on the free RTOS. So I guess the question would be, how does AWS and free RTOS is helping customer or can help customers?
Well, yeah, I think a great way that FreeRTOS helps customers is that we actually work with a lot of partners, and so bringing FreeRTOS to their tool chains and their solutions. So I think the breadth of the number of FreeRTOS ports and integrations with silicon vendors for their microcontrollers, as well as tools and tool sets, is is one of the big benefits, that there are so many choices that you have if you use FreeRTOS. And another benefit is that FreeRTOS is not only just the kernel, but it's a set of libraries that you can use, and they're now modular. So there's been some revamping of the code base, and each of the core modules, like MQTT and so forth, they can be used independently, um, with or without FreeRTOS, actually. So there are FreeRTOS libraries that allow you to even use a different RTOS, which may surprise some people, but it's true. And but the FreeRTOS kernel is also, available to you. So I think another benefit is really the modularity with these different services and libraries that plug into them. So there's a lot of different ways to roll FreeRTOS, and we keep it very open to developers. All right, cool. So let's see. We are actually rapidly approaching the top of the hour. So it'd be great to maybe just go around just real quick before we talk about maybe some of the engagements and events we're going to be at. Maybe just really a fun question. Uh, what is your favorite IoT tool or service, and why do you like it? Maybe to you, Alina.
Yeah, so in terms of my favorite IoT service, I have to say that this would probably be the IoT rule engine. And I think the reason for that is, I think the rule engine is a really smart service, right? So it can process loads and loads of messages at scale, and it can route them to the correct AWS service, to the right AWS service, as the builder requires for those messages to be redirected. And I mean, it's really interesting because it can parse on the fly your messages, based on the structure of your payload, based on the keys in your JSON payload, for example. And it can route it, to other services like S3 for storage, or, Kinesis, or, for streaming purposes, or DynamoDB, and of course, other options as well. And you can also run like really sort of intelligent functions as part of your rule engine query. So yeah, it's kind of the service that I believe brings it all together to a certain extent. Data coming from your devices, reaching the cloud, reaching on the topics on the MQTT broker, and then sort of being listened to by these smart rules that decide what to do with the data. So yeah, I think it's really a very interesting service. And if you don't know much about it, then I'd really recommend that you play a little bit with the SQL statements and see how it all looks like and works.
I like that. That's a good one. We talk a lot about IoT Core, and of course, it's a great MQTT broker, very scalable. but the rules engine maybe is the hidden gem in using IoT Core, right? That's great. I like that one.
Yeah,
How
and I
about
mean,
you? Oh, go ahead.
just one last thing then. I mean, thinking about it, how many other services are there like the rule engine, that do what the rule engine does. And I would say that actually the rule engine in itself is pretty unique as a service. So yeah, I think it's a really smart one.
Great. Yeah, we should promote that more. I think the rule engine is great. How about you, Syed? What is your favorite tool, and why do you like it, or service?
Sorry, was that for me, Dan? I had a
Yeah, that's for you.
Yeah, sorry, I had a blip in my connectivity. So yeah, for me, definitely Device Defender is one of our service which provides security at scale and an augmentation for all AWS IoT devices. And we have two sets of profiles which we can create. One would be a rule-based profile, which we can create our own algorithms such as device connectivity to find out whether device has become chatty and to see if the device has been breached. And then we also have another feature set within it is called ML Detect, which is backed by machine learning to understand the capability of the device and to notify us whether it's been breached or not, because it basically can give us reactive, proactive as well as reactive actions when the device has been breached, or we need to carry out an instant audit on all our devices. And the beauty is that you don't actually need any extra tools or features to set it up. And it uses the data which you have already on AWS IoT, and it augments the connectivity. And yeah, it keeps our devices secure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one too. How about you, Nenad? Your favorite tool or service?
Yeah, so I'm biased, as I mentioned earlier. Like I would say Greengrass.
Mm,
The reason being is because I think I did this talk about earlier, where we live in this kind of distributed world where we have things that are close to us as humans, and then things that are far away from us. But usually when you need something to be responsive, it needs to be quite near the source. So in that scenario, Greengrass helps out, right? Because it's sitting next to those devices, next to the sensors and actuators. And then on top of this, it allows more or less for developers to quickly iterate on code and delight customers with new features. So yeah, that's something that will never go out of fashion. So people will always want new features, and they will
mm.
always want responsiveness. So yeah, that's why I like the Greengrass.
That's great. That's great. Well, for myself, I have to go with ExpressLink. We talked about it before. It's really a game changer, and I think it makes embedded development just inordinately easier to develop IoT applications and products. So, yeah, ExpressLink for me. Um, so I think we're running out of time here, getting to the top of the hour. But I did want to mention that we have some speaking engagements. We are going to be at some conferences. Let's just maybe real quick talk about some of the things that are coming up for us. I know Dev Summit is just around the corner. That's the ARM developer conference, and myself and Nenad both have uh, speaking sessions there. So I'll be talking about SMP and the Raspberry Pi Pico, and that's symmetric multiprocessing, basically using multiple cores on the Pi Pico and running those with FreeRTOS. And how about you, Nenad?
Yeah, I'll be talking about managing a fleet of devices, how you can do A/B testing on them as well. So yeah, that will be my talk.
Great. And Alina, what have you got coming up?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to be there at reInvent. So yeah, the plan is for me to meet the builders and answer questions and sort of give a deeper dive if necessary into the consumer and connectivity set of services. And then we've got Nenad, we've got the hybrid cloud event where we're going to be showing the Fleetwise demo as well. And yeah, I've got some more things in cooking or in planning at the moment, and I will probably let you know in the next sessions then.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And stay tuned on our Twitter, our Twitter handles, because we'll definitely announce what we're up to on those. I also should mention I'm on the global I'm in the global platform CSIP conference. I'm doing a talk on CSIP for FreeRTOS as well. That's coming up on October 19th. And then also, yes, reInvent is coming. I think we're all going to be at reInvent, which is exciting. So if you're there, definitely say hi, and look forward to meeting people there. And finally, if you have feedback or questions or just some something to share, please reach out to us. We, our Twitter handles are available from this Twitter Spaces. So please reach out to us. We're gonna continue doing these IoT Builder shows. We'll take turns, maybe passing the baton on hosting, but you'll hear from us in the coming weeks. Speaking of which, on the next episode, we have Steve Borsay joining us, who's an AWS IoT hero. And he has a book that has recently come out called AWS Serverless IoT, Inexpensive IoT Projects to Take You from Zero to AWS IoT. So we're going to talk with Steve about his book and the topics on that. And then he's also got another project called cloudboard.cc, which is a really great hardware project. So looking forward to that next week. And until then, so long. Thanks, Nenad. Thanks, Syed, and thanks, Alina, for this really great discussion.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Colleagues.
Thanks, Dan, for having us.
Awesome. All right. Until next week. Talk to y'all soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.